The Ozarks have some of the clearest rivers in the United States. That is not an opinion or regional pride. It is a documented geological fact. The Current River, the Jack's Fork, the 11 Point, the North Fork of the White River, these waterways receive up to 60% of their flow directly from natural springs, filtered through hundreds of feet of Ozark limestone before they ever reach the surface. They run cold in August and clear in flood season. They carry water temperatures that hold steady year-round, fed from deep aquifers that don't register surface weather the way normal rivers do. They carry visibility that most American rivers never achieve. In clear conditions, you can see the bottom in 8, 10, 12 feet of water. People drive hours to float them, fish them, camp along their gravel bars, and experience something that feels genuinely unaffected by the modern world. The Ozark National Scenic Riverways draws 1.5 million visitors per year. The rivers are the identity of this region in a way that nothing else is. Not the hills, not the caves, not the towns. The rivers. That feeling is becoming a lie. Something is happening to the Ozarks rivers that most people who love them don't know about, and that most people outside the region have never been told. It is not one thing, it is several things converging simultaneously. Agricultural runoff, an invasive algae with no known cure, the collapse of an ancient species that has been living in these rivers for 65 million years, and the specific geological vulnerability of the Ozarks to exactly the kinds of pressures now bearing down on it from every direction. The rivers look the same from the canoe. That is part of the problem. Missouri has approximately 51,978 miles of river. Of those, exactly 178.4 miles are federally protected as scenic rivers. That is less than 1/3 of 1%. The Current River and the Jack's Fork are among them, designated as the first federally protected rivers in the United States. When the Ozark National Scenic Riverways was established in 1964, they served as the prototype for the National Wild and Scenic Rivers Act of 1968. They were chosen because they were extraordinary, and the designation that was meant to protect them has left the overwhelming majority of what feeds them entirely unprotected. Rivers don't exist in isolation. They are the result of everything upstream, every field, every unpaved road, every cattle operation with direct stream access, every failing septic system on a hillside above a creek that feeds into a tributary that feeds into the current. Protecting the Current River without protecting its watershed is like protecting a patient while ignoring the disease. The Ozarks' particular vulnerability comes from its geology. The limestone plateau that defines this region is what scientists call karst terrain, a landscape riddled with caves, sinkholes, and underground drainage systems. Rain that falls on an Ozark farm does not percolate slowly through layers of soil and rock before reaching the water table. In many places, it moves directly into the underground system through sinkholes and cracks, traveling through cave passages at speeds that allow almost no natural filtration. What goes on the surface of an Ozark farm can reach a spring or a river in hours rather than years. The same geology that produces the beautiful spring-fed clarity of the Current River also makes that river uniquely defenseless against what happens in the fields above it. The Ozark hellbender is the oldest indicator of what is happening. It is not a charismatic animal. It grows up to 2 feet long and is covered in wrinkled, mucus-coated skin folds that help it breathe underwater. It has been called a snot otter, a devil dog, a grampus, and a lasagna lizard. It hides under flat rocks on riverbeds by day and walks slowly along the bottom at night hunting crayfish. Most people who float the Current River have never seen one because they are nocturnal and secretive and have always been easy to overlook. They have lived in the rivers of the Ozarks for approximately 65 million years. They survived the extinction event that ended the dinosaurs. They are one of only 3 species of giant salamander on Earth, and they breathe almost entirely through their skin, absorbing dissolved oxygen directly from the water flowing across those wrinkled folds. That method of respiration makes them one of the most sensitive water quality indicators in nature. A hellbender cannot survive in water that is too warm, too silted, too low in oxygen, or too contaminated with agricultural chemicals. When the hellbender disappears from a river, that river has already changed in ways that most human visitors cannot detect. The Ozark hellbender, found only in the mountain streams of southern Missouri and northern Arkansas, was listed as federally endangered in 2011. Its population has declined by more than 75% since the 1980s. Fewer than 600 are believed to remain in the wild. The Jack's Fork River, one of the two rivers at the heart of the Ozark National Scenic Riverways, has lost its entire hellbender population. The river is still clear. The river still attracts 1.5 million visitors per year. The hellbenders are gone. Missouri is the only state in the country that contains both recognized subspecies of the North American hellbender. The eastern hellbender, found in the northern Ozark Highlands in the Niangua, Gasconade, and Merrimack River systems, was listed as federally endangered in 2021. Its population has declined more than 70% since the 1970s. The Missouri Department of Conservation has stated plainly that both subspecies may become extinct in the state within 20 years. Subscribe before you go further. Hit the button and the bell. This matters. The causes of the hellbender's collapse are the same forces that are degrading the rivers themselves. Sedimentation is the most widespread. When farmland, pasture, or timberland is cleared to the edge of a stream bank, there are no roots to hold the bank stable and nothing to stop topsoil from washing into the water when it rains. Cattle with direct access to streams destroy bank vegetation, compact the soil, and deposit waste directly into the water. Unpaved roads, and the Ozarks has a great many of them, generate runoff that carries sediment loads into every tributary they cross. One study found that the first hour of stormwater runoff from developed land carries a pollution index higher than raw sewage. Sediment clouds the water, clogs fish gills, smothers the gravel beds where hellbenders nest, and where the insects and small organisms at the base of the river food chain live and reproduce. A silted riverbed does not look dramatically different from a clear one when you are floating over it. The damage is below the surface in what can no longer live there. Dams compound the problem in ways that are less visible but equally damaging. The construction of Beaver, Table Rock, Bull Shoals, and Norfolk dams in the 1940s and 1950s didn't just change the White River, they fragmented the hellbender habitat, creating warm, still reservoirs between populations that had previously been connected. Hellbenders cannot survive in reservoirs. They need fast, cold, oxygenated water. The dams isolated the remaining populations from each other, preventing the genetic exchange that keeps small populations viable. Isolated populations inbreed. Inbred populations lose the resilience to survive disease. And disease, specifically a chytrid fungus called Batrachochytrium dendrobatitis, has been detected in every surveyed hellbender population in Missouri. The St. Louis Zoo's captive hellbender population lost 75% of its animals to this fungus between 2006 and 2007. The wild populations have no zoo to step in and manage their exposure. Agricultural nutrient runoff, nitrogen and phosphorus from fertilizers, and animal operations accelerates the growth of algae and reduces dissolved oxygen levels throughout the watershed. In the White River Basin, which covers portions of southwest Missouri and northwest Arkansas and drains into Table Rock and Beaver Lakes, 135 miles of streams and 3,400 acres of Beaver Lake are currently listed as impaired. The phosphorus and nitrogen levels in the White River have raised serious concerns about drinking water quality for the more than 1 million people who live in the upper White River Basin, including the cities of Springfield and Branson in Missouri, and Fayetteville and Rogers in Arkansas. The number of poultry farms in Jasper County, Missouri alone has more than doubled since the early 2000s. Poultry litter and feces, when inadequately contained, release ammonia that runs directly into nearby waterways through the Ozarks Karst drainage. Researchers studying the Spring River found mussel populations recovering from a century of heavy metal contamination from the tri-state mining district, only to face a new wave of decline they believe is linked to expanding poultry operations in the watershed. The river recovered from lead and zinc. It may not recover from what is replacing them. Then there is rock snot. Didymosphenia geminata is a single-celled freshwater alga that produces long brown stalks capable of blanketing entire riverbeds in thick mats. It is commonly called rock snot, and the name is accurate. A bloom looks like a dense, fibrous mass covering everything on the river bottom. It has the texture of wet wool. It smothers the rocks and gravel that form the structural foundation of a healthy river ecosystem. It crowds out the native algae that river insects depend on for food. It eliminates the gravel bar habitats where fish spawn and where species like the hellbender nest. It clogs fishing lures and hooks, making recreational fishing in affected stretches nearly impossible, and it disrupts everything downstream from it in the food chain because removing the bottom of a food chain removes everything that depends on it. It is confirmed in both Missouri and Arkansas. It thrives in exactly the cold, clear, low-nutrient water that defines the best Ozark rivers, the rivers that people come from hundreds of miles to experience. It has no known method of eradication. Once it is established in a river system, it cannot be removed. It spreads through a single drop of water, a kayak, a canoe, a paddleboard, a pair of felt-soled wading boots. Any gear transferred from an infected waterway to a clean one can carry rock snot with it. The Ozark National Scenic Riverways attracts 1.5 million visitors per year. The vast majority arrive from outside the region, many of them having paddled or fished other rivers beforehand. The gear cleaning protocols that would stop the spread of rock snot are voluntary. Enforcement is essentially impossible across 134 miles of river corridor. And because rock snot looks, in its early stages, like ordinary algae on a wet rock, most paddlers carrying it to a new river have no idea they are doing so. That is the particular cruelty of the situation. The people who love these rivers most, who plan float trips a year in advance, who bring their children back to the same gravel bar summer after summer, who consider the current river a defining experience of their life in the Ozarks, are among the primary vectors carrying this organism into rivers that cannot rid themselves of it once it arrives. The Karst geology that makes all of this so urgent is the same geology that makes the Ozarks what they are. There are more than 7,500 recorded caves in Missouri. The state is sometimes called the cave state, and the cave system is not separate from the rivers. It is the same system. The underground drainage that produces the spring-fed clarity of the current and the Jack's Fork also means that the aquifer beneath the Ozark and the rivers above it are functionally one body of water. Rain that falls on a farm in Douglas County can reach a spring on the current river in hours, carrying with it whatever was on that farm's surface: fertilizer, animal waste, pesticide residue, sediment. There is almost no filtration between them. The rock that makes the water clear is the same rock that makes it defenseless. This is why the Ozarks rivers are more sensitive to surface activity than most other river systems in the country, and why the threats accumulating above them are more consequential than they would be in a region with deeper, more insulating soils. In a different geology, a poultry farm's runoff might be absorbed and broken down before reaching surface water. In the Ozarks, it moves straight through. Of Missouri's 51,978 miles of river, 178.4 miles are protected. The rest drain through landscapes where the pressures described in this video are increasing rather than decreasing. The poultry industry is expanding in southwest Missouri. The population of the Springfield-Branson corridor grows every year, adding stormwater runoff and development pressure to watersheds already under strain. Benton County, Arkansas, and Christian County, Missouri, both within the upper White River Basin, have seen population growth exceeding 27% in recent years. More people, more impervious surface, more runoff, more nutrients entering a system that is already measuring those nutrients at levels that concern drinking water providers. The recreational use of the protected rivers continues to climb. Paddling has, by multiple accounts, exploded in the Ozarks over the past decade. That means more opportunities for rock snot to spread, more bank erosion at access points, more foot traffic across the gravel bars that are the biological foundation of the river system. None of this is malicious. People come to the Ozarks rivers because the rivers are extraordinary, and the rivers are being changed by the scale of attention they are receiving. Combined with the agricultural and development pressure, from every direction upstream. The hellbender has lived in these rivers for 65 million years. It survived the end of the dinosaurs. It survived the ice ages. It did not survive the last 50 years of how this land has been used, and fewer than 600 remain in the wild. The Jack's Fork River, one of the two rivers at the heart of the Ozark National Scenic Riverways, one of the most beautiful stretches of moving water in the American interior, has none left at all. The water is still clear, the bluffs are still there, the gravel bars are still cold in August. What is living in that water is telling a different story, and the window for responding to it is not unlimited. Subscribe if you haven't. Hit the bell. Drop a comment. Are you seeing changes in the rivers near you? Because the people who fish and float these waterways every season notice what the data takes years to confirm. Thank you for watching. The truth doesn't shout. It waits for you to look closer.